Okay, so, you guys have been really into this whole, like, question of, existence and
Yeah.
being, and you've sent in some really interesting stuff about Martin Heidegger,
Yeah.
which I'll be honest, I had to kind of like,
Brush up on.
yeah, brush up on, yeah.
A little dense, but
It's
it's
dense,
good.
but it's very compelling.
Yeah.
So we've got some excerpts here, and I think it would be great to kind of go through them together.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful that these excerpts give us both a kind of introduction to his key ideas, but they also really place him within this wider context of 20th century thought,
Right.
like where he fits into the history of philosophy.
Right.
And, you can really see this fork in the road
Yeah.
with his kind of existentialism,
Right.
and then how that really diverged from, what people like Wittgenstein were doing.
Okay, so like right off the bat,
Yeah.
we've got this central tension
Right.
with Heidegger being obsessed with this question. What is
The
being
big question.
the big question, right? It's like,
The
hold on,
question is.
if you can answer that, you've answered everything.
Right.
But then you have these linguistic analysts who are like,
And
wait.
Pump the brakes.
That question
Yeah.
is a bad question.
It's meaningless.
Right. They thought that so many problems in philosophy were not like actual deep insights into the nature of reality,
Yeah.
but they were just caused by confusions about language.
Oh.
So their solution was, we need to analyze language.
Ooh.
We need to look at the way we use words
Right.
in the proper context. And if
Yeah.
we do that, then these big, scary, seemingly profound questions,
Right.
they just kind of dissolve.
So they would say that I guess applying like a concept like meaning to existence
Right.
would be like asking
Yeah.
what's the temperature of blueness or something.
Right. Yeah. It's a category mistake.
They just saw it as you're not using the word being
Yeah.
correctly.
Okay, so that's a really different way
Yeah.
of looking at the universe.
Totally different.
Right. Because for Heidegger and this whole existential tradition,
Yeah.
that question of being wasn't just like a linguistic puzzle to solve.
Well-
No, it was deeper than that.
Way deeper. It was this primal thing. It's something that underpins all of logic and language.
Yeah.
Like it's the foundation of our experience of being alive.
So, I mean, this source really underscores that for Heidegger,
Yeah.
this led him to believe that we need a whole new
A new way of doing philosophy.
way of, yeah.
Right. One that goes beyond just dissecting language.
Right.
And really engages with existence itself.
Right. Okay, so to even begin to wrap our heads around this,
Yeah.
we have to start with Heidegger,
Yeah.
right?
Let's get into his background.
Okay, so he's born in 1889
Okay.
in this like very rural, very religious part of southern Germany. And I mean, it sounds like his early life was just steeped in tradition,
Yeah.
and this really profound connection to spirituality.
I mean, the fact that he even spent some time as a Jesuit novice, right?
Yeah,
That really highlights how much he was preoccupied
totally.
with these spiritual and philosophical questions.
Right, from the beginning.
Yeah, early on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that religious background, it left its mark
Yeah.
on his later philosophical work.
Yeah.
Even though he kind of shifted away from traditional theology,
Right.
there's this consistent thread
Yeah.
of being concerned with meaning, with existence.
Right. So I imagine that when he finally gets to the University of Freiburg,
Yeah,
that must have been such a huge
a
shift.
huge change. Yeah.
Going from this rural, like very traditional upbringing
Yeah.
to like, the big city.
Well, and you've got to remember, Germany at the time was in this period of really rapid
Oh, what's right.
industrialization, urbanization, all these old certainties that
Yeah.
were being questioned. Yeah.
And philosophy itself was in a state of change.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, like those big systems, those metaphysical systems of Kant, of Hegel,
Yeah.
they were starting to feel a little shaky, especially
After Nietzsche, right?
after Nietzsche, yeah.
God is dead.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like, what is the foundation now?
Yeah. Yeah. And not only that, there were so many other challenges facing philosophy.
Oh, like what?
Well, you have science, right? You have Einstein's theory of relativity,
Oh.
quantum mechanics starting to develop.
Yeah.
Those are like, redefining time,
Yeah.
challenging the nature of reality as it was understood.
Right. Like philosophy was supposed to be the one to explain all that.
Exactly. And then you have psychology, which is suggesting that, even logic might be
Wow.
rooted in human thought processes
Yeah.
rather than these objective truths
So it's like philosophy's authority is being chipped away at them.
from all sides. It was a really interesting time to be entering the philosophical scene.
Right, and this is where Heidegger gets into phenomenology.
Yes.
And particularly
Husserl.
Husserl.
Husserl's logical investigators.
Logical investigations.
Yeah, and the source really describes this as a turning point for Heidegger.
Yeah.
Like he's finding a potential bedrock
Yeah.
in this shifting landscape.
So like how did that offer like a solution for him?
Well, Husserl's phenomenology, it emphasizes direct experience.
Okay.
And the structures of consciousness.
Yeah, okay.
And it offered this way to move beyond both like traditional metaphysics,
Okay.
but also the reductionism of the sciences.
Oh, okay.
It was a way to get back to the things themselves, to those fundamental experiences that shape how we see the world.
Right, right. Okay, so now we're into Heidegger's early career.
Okay.
He's establishing himself at Freiburg.
Yep.
He gets married.
Marries Elfriede Pitry.
Yeah, right.
Becomes Husserl's assistant. He's doing well.
Doing well.
But then World War I breaks out.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Heidegger, he had a heart condition, so he wasn't on the front lines.
Right.
But the disillusionment after
Yeah.
the war, it really impacted him.
Yeah.
It was like the pre-war world, it vanished.
Yeah.
It was a massive break.
Yeah.
Not just politically, but culturally and intellectually.
Yeah.
That initial enthusiasm for the war, it quickly turned into horrific reality.
Right.
And people lost faith in the institutions.
Yeah.
There was a sense of loss, uncertainty.
Yeah.
And for Heidegger, I think, it really fueled his search for something
More enduring
more fundamental, more enduring.
than what had just disappeared.
Absolutely.
So then in 1919, there's a big shift.
Yeah, so around 1919, he reportedly loses his religious faith.
Oh, wow.
And he also starts to move away from some of Husserl's ideas.
Oh, interesting.
He starts to see Husserl's concept of the transcendental ego, that idea of a pure, universal consciousness, as an illusion. And he becomes more focused on the subject
Okay.
with their experiences and the question of being itself.
Okay, so this is a key turning point.
Yeah, it is.
Right. Because he's not satisfied with this idea of a universal,
Yeah.
detached consciousness
Attached consciousness.
being like the ultimate foundation
Yeah.
for philosophy.
It wasn't enough.
He needed to go deeper.
He wanted to go deeper.
Like that act of
The
existing.
being that underpins everything.
Okay, and so then this concept of being
Yeah.
becomes like his obsession.
Yeah, his main thing.
It has to be something beyond science, beyond psychology, beyond logic.
Beyond all of that.
Right, but the source points out, some critics were saying that this is just like the soul.
Right.
Where
The
it
old
wa-
concept of the soul.
Right,
Yeah, they were saying, like, you're just dressing up this old idea,
right.
a new language.
Okay, so how would Heidegger respond to that?
Well, I mean, he was trying to make a distinction, right, between his concept of being and this traditional notion of the soul.
Okay.
He wanted to emphasize that being is intrinsically connected to existence
Okay.
rather than being separate and
Yeah.
immaterial realm.
Right.
But you're right, there are definitely some echoes
Yeah.
of these earlier ideas.
It's like he's struggling to explain something.
Yeah, it's so fundamental.
Yeah.
It's hard to put it into words.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So then he's got this idea of a history of being.
Oh, yeah, the history of being.
Which is very interesting.
Very interesting.
So he says that the early Greek philosophers,
It's pre-Socratics.
the pre-Socratics, okay,
Yeah.
they had a more direct
A
understanding
deeper understanding of being.
but then
That when we lost it.
we lost it
Yeah.
because of
Socrates, Plato, Aristotle.
okay, and this is what he calls
The forgetting of being.
the forgetting of being.
Right. So his narrative is, there was this shift from a more holistic engagement with the question of being
Okay.
to a more fragmented approach
Okay.
where philosophy gets split up into all these different disciplines,
Right.
ethics, politics, natural science,
Metrical.
and is as a concept,
Yeah.
it gets reduced to just a grammatical function,
Right.
loses its deeper meaning,
So what Heidegger's trying to do is
rediscover this lost understanding.
rediscover it.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does he go about doing that?
Well, his method, it's similar to Husserl's reduction.
Okay.
It's about setting aside the ways we use is
In normal language.
in everyday language
Yeah.
to confront the mystery of being.
But if we've forgotten being,
Yeah.
what's the consequence of that?
Well, he argues, we end up with this superficial modern existence,
Okay.
lacking self-awareness,
Yeah.
dominated by technology.
Right.
And he has this famous line, science does not think. He's really critical of this technological society.
Okay, but how do you even talk about this?
I know, it's so hard.
Like if being is so fundamental
Right.
that we don't even recognize it.
Yeah.
Our language isn't equipped
It's not built for it.
to talk about it.
And Heidegger actually agreed with Wittgenstein on this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he thought that it's very difficult to talk about these fundamental things
Yeah.
using our existing language.
Yeah.
And so that led him to develop his own
Jargon.
jargon, yeah.
Right, and it's really
Dense.
dense.
Yeah.
The example that they give here,
Oh, yeah.
nature as the categorical aggregate.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It makes you wonder, like, is this conveying meaning?
Right.
Or is it just a barrier?
Yeah.
It's a big debate.
Yeah, so this is a major criticism of Heidegger.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
For sure.
People are like, is he just making up words?
Well, he would say that he needed to create new terminology
Okay.
because the limitations of everyday language,
Yeah.
you can't grasp these fundamental questions with that.
But then didn't he also warn against, like, the hermeticism of words?
Yes, he did.
Right.
So there's this tension between those two things.
Right. It's like he's trying to break language Yeah. to get to something beyond it.
To get at something deeper.
But then he's losing everybody.
And he might lose people along the way.
Right.
Yeah, it's a tough balance.
Okay, so in 1923,
Yeah.
Heidegger gets a big promotion.
He gets appointed in Marburg.
Right.
Pretty young, actually.
And the source says this is partly due to Husserl.
Yeah, Husserl was a big supporter
Right.
of Heidegger, yeah.
And he's kind of cultivating this persona,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Like he starts wearing these traditional Southern German clothes,
Right, almost to like,
emphasizes Germanic authenticity.
right, like this rootedness.
Yeah, it's a contrast to all the other stuff going on in Germany at the time.
Like
All the, quantum mechanics stuff in Göttingen.
right.
Very
Yeah.
different vibe.
Okay, and then there's this relationship
Oh, yes.
with Hannah Arendt.
a very significant relationship.
Right, their intellectual connection
Yeah.
turns into this love affair.
Yeah, it does.
And the source suggests that this might have been
A new perspective on being
Yeah.
for Heidegger, even if it wasn't in his philosophy directly.
right, and it was all very secretive.
Yeah.
Right? Because
it had to be.
in that environment.
It was pretty scandalous, right?
Very much so.
So it adds a whole other layer
To his story.
to his story, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so 1927,
Big year.
huge year.
Being in Time,
Being in Time comes out.
dedicated to Husserl.
Oh, wow.
And he opens with this, Plato's old question.
What is the meaning of being?
Yeah, basically.
Right, so he's going right back
To the big question.
to the source, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's essentially asking,
Do we even understand?
Yeah.
Like, do we even know what we're talking about when we say being? Like, he's trying to wake us up
yeah.
to this question.
So this is where we get Dasein.
Dasein.
Yes, the big one.
Okay. Which, for our listeners
Who aren't familiar,
yeah.
it's essentially human existence or being there.
Okay, so it's not just being.
No, it's specifically being human.
Okay.
And it's characterized by this understanding of its own being.
Okay.
And it's being in the world.
Being in the world. Okay.
Right, so the source makes this comparison to Descartes.
Okay.
Descartes' cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am.
Right.
He starts with thinking
Okay.
as the basis of certainty.
But Heidegger starts with,
Being in the world.
okay, so it's before.
Yeah, it's more
It's
fundamental.
before the thinking.
Almost precognitive.
Okay, so it's not that we're in a container called the world.
Right, it's not like we're inside of something.
Yeah.
It's more like we're fundamentally involved with
Okay.
and defined by our interaction
Okay.
within it.
So then Heidegger's argument is that being has been overlooked.
Yes, ignored because it's too obvious.
Right.
It's too close.
It's like right there in front of our face.
It is.
Yeah.
And he uses this idea of unconcealment, aletheia,
Okay.
as the way to understand being.
And he gives this metaphor of
Clearing a
clearing a clearing, right?
in a forest
In the forest to let the light in.
to let the light reveal what's there.
Right.
The underlying ground.
Okay. So it's about creating a space
A space for being to
to show itself,
to show itself, yeah.
to emerge.
Okay.
It's not about finding being somewhere else.
Right.
It's about letting it be revealed.
Okay, but then the source points out
Yeah.
that there's a paradox here.
Oh, there always is.
Right.
Yeah.
With this unconcealment, aletheia.
Right. So the problem is that by revealing something,
Yeah.
you're also concealing something else.
Oh,
So every revelation also involves a concealment
right.
because you're highlighting one aspect of being
Yeah.
and pushing other possibilities into the background.
So there's always something hidden. Yeah, there's always something that remains hidden.
Okay. And the source also questions Heidegger's reliance on like the original meanings of words.
Right, like with Aletheia.
Yeah.
He says that means non-forgetting.
Right. But why should the ancient meaning be better than the modern understanding?
It's a good question.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the etymology of words, it can be helpful to see how concepts have developed,
Yeah.
but it's not always the case that the original meaning
Yeah.
is more true.
Right. And this kind of goes back to
His language.
his language,
Yeah.
right? Like he loves
It's
to
always co-opting words.
co-opt and combine.
Combining, creating new words.
It makes it hard to understand. And he
Yeah.
even warns against that.
Yeah, he says to be careful of unfettered hermeticism of words.
But at the same time, he wants to preserve the force of those words.
It's almost like he wants to break language
Yeah.
to get at something beyond language.
Yeah.
But again, he risks losing people
In the process.
in the process.
Okay, so then there's this focus on the essence of man.
Right.
Through this very specific lens of being.
Yeah, and the source raises this question.
Yeah.
Does he neglect other parts of human existence?
Right, like our psychology,
Just solid
its interaction.
Our relationships.
Yeah, as being the only way.
To understand ourselves.
Right.
It's a valid question.
And it seems like for Heidegger, the way to get in touch with the essence of man
Right.
is through this confrontation with
Death and inauthenticity.
right. Like we have to understand our finitude,
And our limits, yeah.
that we're going to die.
Confront our mortality.
Right. And that can reveal our true being.
Our authentic being, yeah.
He also introduces this idea of verfall
Decay, falling away. It's this drift away from our true being.
because of technology, and that leads to
An inauthentic mode of being.
right. So in his inaugural lecture,
What of metaphysics?
right,
He really goes into this.
he's worried about us becoming das man.
Yeah, the impersonal one.
Right, losing our individuality.
To societal norms,
Mhm.
expectations,
He's not a fan of.
mass behavior, empty talk,
Right.
curiosity for the new.
Over the true.
Yeah, he sees a loss of genuine joy.
It's a pretty bleak picture.
It is, it is.
But the source then says
Yeah,
that maybe this whole search for being
yeah.
is really a disguised search for God.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Yeah,
Even though he rejected traditional religion, it's like
Yeah.
he's looking for meaning
he is.
in a time without God.
Yeah, I mean, even though he moved away from traditional theology, there's still this sense of searching
Yeah.
for something
Ultimate.
ultimate,
Yeah.
something to ground us.
And he's also pretty critical of modern culture.
Oh, yeah. He criticizes everything,
Like
from jazz music to Charlie Chaplin.
he's not happy
Not at
with the
all.
direction things are going.
He's not.
And this all kind of leads us to
The elephant in the room.
his involvement with Nazism.
Yeah, we can't ignore it.
He accepts the rectorship
Of the University of Freiburg in 1933.
and then joins the Nazi Party.
It's a fact.
It's a fact, and the source quotes him saying that the essential will
Of the German university.
is tied to the historical mission.
Of the German people.
It's really disturbing.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
And it really makes you question
His judgment.
his judgment.
His values.
And there's this talk of a will to science,
Aligning with the Nazi regime.
but the Nazis rejected.
For science.
Right. So it's just
It's contradictory.
it's contradictory and wrong.
It is.
And then he cuts off contact with Husserl,
His mentor.
who is Jewish.
Yeah.
And his exchanges with Hannah Arendt are complicated and inadequate.
Yeah.
He never really apologizes
Well, for
for what he did.
for his actions.
It's a dark chapter, and it makes it so hard to
Yeah.
reconcile his philosophy with his actions.
It's a huge challenge.
Right. I mean, this is someone who's asking these profound questions
About being.
about existence.
And yet,
He was involved with this
horrific ideology.
horrific ideology. Yeah.
And there's this debate.
Yeah.
Does his Nazism invalidate his philosophy?
Right. And the source also talks about how
Yeah.
some of his ideas
Might have resonated.
with German triumphalism.
Right, like his emphasis on the connection between
Yeah.
the German language and ancient Greek.
Right.
And how that makes it special for philosophical thought.
Right.
That could definitely be seen as
Aligning us.
some nationalistic themes.
Yeah.
It's hard to separate his philosophy
From the context.
From the context in which he was working.
And then even after he resigns as rector.
Yeah.
And kind of steps back from politics.
It seems like he still believed
in some kind of
fundamental transformation of society.
And he keeps talking about the threat.
From the Anglo-Saxon world.
To Europe.
Yeah, his post-rectorate period is
complex.
Very complex.
He's retreating into his work.
Yeah.
But he's still holding on to these
flawed beliefs.
Right.
And he never really takes responsibility.
For supporting Hitler.
No.
So his later life
yeah.
includes these encounters with Paul Celan.
The Jewish poet.
Right.
Yeah.
And he never apologizes to Celan.
No.
For his past.
It's really unfortunate.
And then Hannah Arendt.
Yeah.
She's trying to understand his work.
To promote it.
In the U.S.
Yeah. It's a very nuanced, uncomfortable picture.
It really highlights.
The ethical dilemmas surrounding his legacy.
Right. So we have these individuals.
Like Celan and Arendt.
Who experience the horrors of Nazism.
Firsthand.
And
they still engage with his work.
But with reservations.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
It shows the power of his thought.
But also the complexities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heidegger dies in 1976.
And the source ends with Safransky's quote.
A way of doing philosophy sinking into darkness.
It's a fitting image for such a complex and disturbing story.
It makes you think about the relationship
between
philosophy, personal responsibility,
and politics.
Right. I mean, his legacy is still
contested
and
full of ethical challenges.
But his impact is undeniable.
Absolutely.
And the source provides these examples of his ideas.
Yeah, some key takeaways.
His engagement with the pre-Socratic.
Galathea. His concept of unconcealment.
The nature of philosophy itself.
Confronting nothingness.
Phenomenological inquiry.
In the world.
It's a reminder of his intellectual depth.
Yeah, despite the controversies.
And then there's this range of critical reception.
Yeah, you have George Steiner praising being and time.
Saying it reshaped thought.
And then you have Jung.
Being incredibly harsh.
Calling his philosophy neurotic.
It shows how divisive he was and still is.
Yeah.
So we've gone through a lot.
We have.
We've explored his quest for being.
Dasein, aletheia.
The context, the historical and personal context.
The Nazism.
The Nazism.
Guys, see you in another podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.